is in heaven. As noted in the obituary, he was very interested in Bible study and had started a ministry which he had called Rock of Bible. He wanted to help others with their faith. Ednel had become something of I call him a street evangelist. When the medical examiner called me, they wanted to know his occupation. I said, evangelist is the closest thing I could say. He had this thing where he would pass out water to individuals and talk to anyone who would listen about the Lord. When I was talking to our church secretary, she reminded me that Jan Arnold, a neighbor, had said she had been led to the Lord by Ednel. That was at a young age. By every measure, Ednel confessed with his mouth that Jesus was Lord and believed that God raised him from the dead, according to Romans 10:8 and 9. You will be saved. With assurance, we believe he was saved. And that's why we can call our gathering today partly a celebration of life. Ednel was born in Haiti in February 1992. So Donna and I adopted him at 1994 at the age of 2. I used to think that adoption was extra special in the sense that parents made a clear decision to have children. In other words, there weren't any accidental pregnancies. Must be a sight. Ednel was really wanted, and all the children were wanted. I learned that the biblical meaning of adoption is even better. Our adoption as sons of God means that we have an inheritance, which is heaven. So, now I'm going to make a little confession here. From the time this child was placed in our household, there was something different about him. It was really obvious. He wasn't like anyone we ever knew. We'll have more to say about this later, and when we get back to the church, I'll invite you to share your stories. It took us years to figure out some things, and we did not always react lovingly. Even recently, Donna and I have taken some training to become foster parents. We learned some things we wish we had known 25 years ago. I think it would have helped. But now, I can tell you in the last several years that as a young adult, Ednel was friendly and curious and seemingly lived without a care. And he loved his family and his heritage. He didn't harbor any bad feelings about anybody. In fact, he forgot many things, but he remembered to treat others well. Ednel had a winsome way about him, and many of you will remember being drawn to him and liking him immediately. As a boy, he was able to speak with adults, and he wasn't shy to do so. I remember one time our youth pastor took Ednel on a mission trip to Minneapolis, and I was somewhat worried that Ednel might be more of a liability than an asset. When I asked the youth director afterwards, he said, "I wish I had a whole youth group like Ednel." He made a difference that day. One time when Ednel was in serious trouble, I received a call from a caseworker at the Hennepin County Jail. She said, Ednel's different from the others that are here. He stood up and greeted me respectfully when I came in the room. There was a softness to his voice. "Tell me about him," she said. That was the other side of Ednel. Getting back to forgetting and forgiving, perhaps Ednel was able to take to heart Philippians 3:13. It's where the Apostle Paul writes, "Brothers and sisters, one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining forward to what lies ahead." Ednel's earthly life ended March 22nd in Crestview, Florida, as a result of an auto pedestrian accident. He was 29 years old. What was he doing walking in the traffic at 4 a.m.? We will never know. But Ednel wasn't, or maybe couldn't be bound by traditions or rules or expectations. He saw things differently. In some ways, you might say Ednel was never truly meant for this world. I mean, his home was the road. He didn't have a career or a spouse. Still, he seemed content. I mentioned that Ednel's occupation was evangelist. The book of Hebrews 13:14 says, "This world is not our permanent home. We are looking forward to a home yet to come." And we know that much of our own discontent is because we think of this world as our permanent home. Ednel was brought to church. We brought him to our home church, Elam Mission, which is now Highland Community Church in Cokato. And he attended Sunday school in Awana there. Donna and I did devotions with all the children when they were young. It seems that Ednel's interest in the Bible might well have come from those early years of instruction. Donna said this was true, and Ednel thanked us for his upbringing. His interest was beyond ordinary. The last time I saw him in October, he walked up and he had an external speaker fastened to his belt. And he was listening to the Bible, the audio Bible, the book of Numbers. Now, it would be uncommon for most people to be studying or listening to this book. But of all the correspondence with me in recent times, Ednel spoke the Bible. It was so overt that a stranger might question this person and his intent. Yet taken at its face value, perhaps this is how God calls all of us to act. Since Romans 1 says not to be ashamed of the gospel. In this way, perhaps Ednel has surpassed us as his parents as a witness for Jesus. If you go to his Facebook page, you can see many examples of his biblical reading. And I know that this will resonate with many of you. When speaking with Annetta in these last days, I thought that it seems tragic that Ednel's life had to end when it was producing spiritual fruit in this way. For many years, Donna and I have been connected with a friend. His name is Miosh Rocky, pastors a church in Pinion, Haiti. As funds permit, Miosh provides gifts of food to the people who, unlike us, don't have choices at the grocery store. They don't have a grocery store. They are impoverished and they may not have the money to purchase or grow food. When I shared this with Ednel, he responded generously with a gift of money to help those in need in his homeland. He used a portion of his Social Security disability check to provide for others, and he strictly forbade me to tell anyone. This is in accordance with Matthew 6:3. And he knew this too. When you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Many of you know that it is trebly difficult for us to be here. There are 2 other graves here. Marking our children. We're not sure what God has in mind for us to learn through this, but we are glad we know the Lord and believe someday we will rest completely in Him and be satisfied with Him only. And we're especially thankful for our children, Stephen, Krista, and Magley, who are helping us grieve. You have helped us by your kind words and condolences. Perhaps as a result of this day, each one of us could be more Christ-like in our attitudes and values. The Apostle Paul said, "Follow me as I follow the example of Christ." Based on what I have said, we could follow Ednel's example in being content, forging ahead, forgetting the past, being generous with what we have, and sharing the good news of our Lord with those that we meet. That's the end of my